first became interested in giant African land snails after seeing public service announcements and news clips just like these.
Florida researchers are tracking a dangerous new pest in Florida, the giant African land snail.
As a snail enthusiast, yes, we really do exist, my interest was piqued. I was no stranger to the domestic snail, having received a pair of them from a professor friend of mine several years ago. Since snails are both male and female, a pair of them inevitably leads to more of them, and there ain't nothing cuter than a baby snail. Giant African land snails pose a problem to Florida agriculture because they eat almost every kind of native plant, including their major revenue-producing plants. One aspect of this invasion that I find most interesting is that experts were able to trace the origin of the snail's arrival to a little kid who brought a single snail to Florida from overseas. That single snail must have been laden with eggs because pretty soon they were turning up everywhere. As it was, I was going to be in Florida visiting my in-laws' farm during spring break. I thought this to be a perfect opportunity to search for a giant African land snail.
I managed to make it down here to the area of Leesburg, which is in Florida, and I'm now standing on a multi-acre farm in search of my quarry. And in this particular case, I'm looking for the giant African land snail. So far I've seen a lot of interesting indigenous species like frogs and lizards and plenty of insects, but no snails yet, so I'll keep you posted.
I was delighted when, on the second morning, I had the good fortune to run into these snails, sticking to the side of an outbuilding on the farm. I was getting close, I could smell it. Okay, maybe I was only smelling the farm life. Although my initial search of the farm was proving fruitless, I did begin to take notice of the abundantly diverse amounts of insects, plants, and reptiles native to this part of Florida. The moment we arrived, I saw this little guy, a stick-thin brown praying mantis. Surrounded by a microcosm of tiny subjects, I quickly set my camera to macro and began to take pictures.
Still no giant African land snails, but these craters here in the ground are caused by something called antlions. Now what an antlion does is it digs a pit so that a passing insect will fall into the pit and will be unable to get out. They kind of struggle climbing up the side. And the antlion is at the very, very cone at the bottom of the pit, and they can actually fling grains of sand like a machine gun up to stun the creature. Now, this wouldn't be complete if I didn't dig one up to show you. So hang on just a minute and I'll show you what an antlion looks like. Okay, so here it is. I've dug one up, and using my net, I filtered all the sand away. And that's what an antlion looks like, this little creature here. And although it has those big jaws, it actually isn't going to bite me or anything. That's what they look like. But they're not giant African land snails, and that is, after all, what I'm after. So I'm going to dump it right back into the dirt from which it came.
I decided that I would strike out that night into the lush tropical foliage that surrounded my in-laws' farm. Surely the darkness would bring my prey out from under whatever damp refuge they wormed their way into during the daylight hours.
Okay, so I'm out here at night and I'm in an orange grove. Well, there's an orange tree here, and I'm looking for evidence of snails anywhere I can find it. There aren't a lot of evidence of snails though. I see plenty of lizards sleeping up in the branches, but no snails as of yet. I'm still looking under the foliage and in the leaves and things, so who knows. I will keep you posted.
Although no snails revealed themselves, I did see and photograph an amazing assortment of the denizens of Florida's buggy nights. day we set out for historic Fort DeSoto, a World War II fort that is now a national park. Known for its lush greenery and sugar sand beaches, I thought for sure I would find the giant snails I was looking for here.
I am hanging out down here at Fort DeSoto Park on the west coast of Florida in what is essentially a mangrove swamp. And I'm here trying to see any evidence of giant land snails or any snails. As it is, the trees do show a lot of evidence of insects feeding off them, but snails would leave a different type of trail. Snails have serrated-like mouths, and they wouldn't leave holes as much as they would leave strips of bare leaves. So I'm not finding any snails here in the mangroves. I did find some interesting things, like these piles of little dirt balls. They look like little beads. That is from a land crab, and there are some there. And if you come along here, there are some more little piles of these dirt balls, and those are left behind by land crabs that dig a new burrow each night. And as they dig their burrow, they eject the sand that's excavated through their mouth parts in those little spherical formations that kind of pile up outside of their den. So this must be the high tide line right here, because there's a land crab hole, and you can see the little balls of sand and dirt. So I'm down in this mangrove swamp looking for any evidence of snails, and so far I have found none. And I hate to say it, but this search for the giant African land snail is turning up to be something of a bust.
This was supposed to be a vacation after all, so the following day we went off to the Walt Disney World Resort, and yes, even there I took a peek under leaves and bushes to look for my slimy gastropod friends. To no avail, however. It seems that invertebrates are not admitted to the Disney World theme parks. My time was beginning to run short. Sure, I had seen much in the way of reptiles and amphibians and even insects, but as of yet, no giant African land snails. I went out into the night one last time to look for them.
Well, it is my last night here in Florida, and I'm out. It's about 8:30, 9 o'clock, somewhere in there. And I'm searching through the woods and trees here, looking for any signs of snails or any kind of life. There are a lot of insects out, but I didn't see any snails. I didn't come across anything like a snail. So I'm afraid, since we're leaving tomorrow, that the search for the African land snail has not borne any fruit. Although I have seen a lot of interesting insects and animals out here, I have not seen any land snails. And I have looked all over different kinds of terrains and different kinds of areas all across this part of Florida, which is close to the west coast. And much to my dismay, I have not come across any land snails at all. Not that this wasn't an amazing journey, and not that I didn't come across a lot of cool stuff, but the purpose was to find the giant African land snail, and I'm afraid that I have not accomplished that goal. So instead, I'm glad I was able to share with you the insects and animals and creatures that I did see on this trip. But as for my searching for land snails, that will have to be in a different area at a different time. So thank you anyway for joining me on this journey, and I hope it was as intriguing for you as it was for me. So this is William Sorrentino from the forests of Florida, signing off.
In conclusion, I'm left to wonder if this giant snail invasion is as much of an invasion as the news and media make it out to be. I arrived expecting to be covered in snails, literally covered in snails, and left with lots of great pictures, but nary a snail in sight. In hindsight, it might have been more prudent of me to change this project title to something like Small Game Hunting in Florida, but no, I set out to find giant snails and alas, found only the harsh reality of disappointment. However, I did learn one thing. When traveling to Florida, bring plenty of bug spray.